So I want you to close your eyes for a second. Seriously. Um, Wherever you are, just for a moment.
Unless you're driving, obviously.
Right. Yeah. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open. But otherwise, imagine you are chained in a dark cave, and you've been there literally since birth.
Just completely immobilized.
Exactly. You can't turn your head. All you can do is stare straight ahead at this like blank stone wall, and you're just watching flickering, distorted shadows cast by a fire that's somewhere behind you.
And because you've never seen anything else, those gray, flat shadows are the only visual input you've ever had.
Right. So naturally, logically, you believe those shadows are absolute reality. Because why wouldn't you? Okay, so open your eyes. The uncomfortable premise of our deep dive today is that your current life, your job, your limits, your anxieties, your fear of stepping out of your comfort zone, well, it might just be another set of shadows.
Yeah, we are looking at a source document today titled Break the Chains, Leaving the Cave. And it's a modern, highly actionable reimagining of Plato's classic thought experiment.
Which sounds super academic, but it's really not.
No, not at all. It's customized specifically for people who feel this pull towards starting something new, but they find themselves just completely paralyzed by the prospect of leaving what's familiar.
Yeah, and the mission today isn't to just sit around and do some lofty, abstract, philosophical musing. We are going to extract a literal roadmap from this text.
Right, a practical guide.
Exactly. We want to figure out how to identify the invisible chains holding you back, how to actually step into the light without just immediately retreating when it gets hard.
Because it does get hard.
Oh, absolutely. And how to deal with the intense, inevitable friction that comes from outgrowing your current environment. So to escape the modern cave, we first have to figure out what those chains actually look like.
Yeah, and the source text makes a fascinating point right up front. It clarifies that the people stuck in the cave, the ones watching the shadows, they aren't stupid or weak-willed.
Which is such a relief to hear, honestly.
Totally. They are simply conditioned. What's fascinating here is that this distinction changes the entire framing of why we feel stuck.
Because we do judge ourselves, right?
Oh, incredibly harshly. When we can't seem to make a change, we think it's a profound character flaw, or, I don't know, a lack of discipline, or just cowardice.
Right, like, oh, I just don't have what it takes.
Exactly. But the text frames it as biological and psychological conditioning. The chains in the modern world are entirely invaluable. It's the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the overwhelming comfort of routine.
And an addiction to the approval of our peers, right?
And what's critical to understand here is the mechanism behind why these chains are so effective. They don't feel like oppression. They feel like safety.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because we throw the word conditioning around a lot. Why does the brain actively prefer the chains? Like, is it just laziness?
It's really not laziness. It's caloric and cognitive efficiency.
Wait, like literal calories?
Yeah. The human brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy. And it is obsessed with conserving that energy. Every time you make a novel decision or, step into an unknown environment, challenge a deeply held belief, your brain has to burn significant cognitive fuel.
Okay, so it's literally exhausting to do something new.
Exactly. Routines, on the other hand, are automated scripts. They require almost zero energy. So when you take a job title and you allow it to become your entire identity, or you adopt the exact political and social beliefs of your immediate peer group, you are handing your brain a highly efficient automated script.
Wow.
And you mistake this cognitive efficiency for reality.
That makes a lot of sense. So we're actively forging our own chains simply because it's calorically and, I guess, emotionally cheaper than looking away from the wall.
Right. It's the path of least resistance.
I look at our modern habits, like mindlessly scrolling through a social media feed. You're sitting on the couch in a dark room, illuminated by this artificial glow, looking at these curated, filtered, two-dimensional snippets of other people's lives.
It's literally the cave.
You are quite literally staring at shadows on a wall. And then you compare your actual, messy, complex life to those 2D shadows.
The analogy is almost uncomfortably accurate. And the text emphasizes that we slowly, without even realizing the shift, we start believing those curated shadows are the baseline for reality.
Yeah.
We voluntarily put on the chains because the alternative, putting the phone down, looking away from societal expectations, and facing the vast, unscripted unknown of a new venture, well, it requires agency. It forces the brain out of its energy-saving mode.
Right, because forging your own chains means you never have to take responsibility for your lack of fulfillment. You can just shrug and say, well, the economy is bad.
Or my industry is just like this.
Yeah, or I'm just not an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this right now, think about the parameters you've accepted in your own life. What if the idea that you aren't, I don't know, creative enough or brave enough to start that new project is literally just a flickering projection on a cave wall that you've been conditioned to watch for 20 years?
It's a heavy thought.
It is. But that brings up a glaring logical issue. If the cave is a trap, and if these limits are just energy-saving illusions, why don't people simply walk out the front door the second they realize they are stuck?
Because the physical and psychological process of waking up is agonizing.
Really?
Yeah. The source document describes a scenario where one person finally breaks free. And it isn't because someone came and magically unlocked their chains.
Right.
It's because a voice inside them finally reached an intolerable threshold of cognitive dissonance and just said, there must be more than this.
But what happens when they actually stand up?
Well, when they step outside the cave, the text says the light physically blinds them. They struggle, they resist, and the overwhelming immediate impulse is to run back into the dark.
Okay, I have to challenge how modern culture talks about this, because this narrative flies in the face of almost every self-help book published in the last decade.
Oh, absolutely.
We constantly hear this toxic positivity rhetoric about finding your truth or stepping into your power, and it's always painted as this beautiful, instantly empowering cinematic moment.
With a great soundtrack playing in the background.
Right, but this text is saying the exact opposite. It claims that finding your truth initially makes you want to curl up in a ball and retreat. Why is the initial phase of leaving your comfort zone so universally miserable?
Well, we have to look at the neurology of homeostasis.
Mm.
Your biological imperative is to maintain a stable, constant internal environment.
Yeah.
Your brain's primary directive is to keep you alive.
Mm.
And to your amygdala, the threat processing center of the brain, safe simply means predictable.
Oh, wow. So even if the situation is awful, if it's predictable, the brain likes it.
Exactly. Even if your current job is soul-crushing or your current relationship is toxic, it's a predictable misery. You know the rules of engagement.
That is so bleak, but so true.
Right. So when you step out into the light to start a completely new venture, your entire paradigm shatters.
Mm.
You're introducing massive unpredictability.
And the brain freaks out.
Completely. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between the unpredictable risk of starting a new business and the unpredictable risk of being stalked by a predator.
Wait, really? It's the exact same response?
Yes. Both trigger a spike in cortisol and adrenaline. The panic you feel when you launch your new website or, hand in your resignation, it isn't a sign you've made a mistake. It is a predictable biological alarm system firing off because you've left the known parameters.
Okay, I get the internal neurological struggle, but practically speaking, when someone leaves their comfort zone, the external pushback isn't usually some cinematic villain telling them they're stupid.
No, rarely.
Often, the pushback comes from people who genuinely love them. How does the text address that kind of quiet, well-meaning resistance?
That is often the most difficult hurdle, honestly. When you start thinking differently and building your own path, society, including your immediate family, they will push back.
Yeah.
Usually sounds like, why are you risking everything? Or you need to be realistic, or just stay where it's safe.
Oh, man. The phrase "be realistic" feels like it has killed more dreams than actual failure ever could.
Undoubtedly. Because to the people still in the cave, realistic means the shadows.
Yeah.
Their definition of reality is constrained by what they have experienced. And the profound realization from the text is that when people tell you to stay safe, safe is just a synonym for the cave.
Wow.
They are asking you to put the chains back on so that the world makes sense to them again.
That is so wild.
The agony of the light is this dual realization. It's the internal terror of navigating an unmapped world, combined with the heartbreak of realizing that the people you love might not be able to follow you into it.
That is a brutal filter. Safe is just another word for the cave. But okay, let's look at what happens if you don't retreat. You endure that initial spike in cortisol.
You grit your teeth.
Right. You ignore the people telling you to be realistic, and you resist the overwhelming biological urge to run back to predictable misery. Eventually, the source tells us your eyes do adjust to the sun.
They do. The neurological alarm system eventually downregulates. The unfamiliar becomes the new baseline.
And when the panic subsides, what does the real world actually look like? Like the text says that the escapee finally sees the sun. They see three-dimensional objects and real colors, and they experience a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
They realize that the shadows they spent their whole lives watching, they weren't outright lies or hallucinations.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is a crucial nuance. The shadows were real phenomena, but they were severely incomplete.
Incomplete, right?
Yeah, they lack dimension, depth, and context.
I think about this in terms of, someone listening who has been stuck in a corporate cubicle for 10 years, terrified to start their own consulting firm. The outside world the text is talking about isn't some mystical wonderland where work is magically easy.
No, not at all.
The corporate job wasn't a hallucination. It was just a two-dimensional, flattened version of what a career could be. It lacked the depth of true autonomy, creative control, and direct impact.
Exactly. The transition from the cave to the light is a transition from merely observing life, sitting there chained, letting external forces dictate your value, to actively designing it.
Actively designing it. I like that.
When you realize the shadows were just projections cast by objects, you suddenly understand that you have agency over the objects themselves. You can rearrange them. You can build your own fire.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
This phenomenon is basically the reversal of learned helplessness. In the cave, you learn that nothing you do changes the shadow on the wall, so you just stop trying.
Right. Why bother?
Exactly. In the light, you realize your actions directly shape your environment. Stepping out makes you realize you were literally built to solve complex three-dimensional problems, but you were atrophying because you were living in a two-dimensional environment.
But then basic human nature kicks in. Because when you discover something this liberating, when you finally break out and see that you have agency, your immediate instinct is to look back at the cave where everyone you know is still sitting in the dark.
Of course.
You want to go back down and share it. You want to free them.
It's the most natural, compassionate impulse. You found the cure to the misery, so you want to distribute it. But the source document issues a massive warning here. Going back down into the cave to free the others is actually the hardest and most dangerous part of the entire journey.
Yeah, the text outlines a scenario where the freed person returns to the cave, and their eyes are now accustomed to the sun, so when they go back into the darkness, they stumble around.
They look foolish to the people still chained.
Right. They excitedly tell everyone, hey, none of this is real. You have agency. You don't have to be chained to this wall. And the response isn't gratitude.
Not at all.
The text says they are laughed at, rejected, and eventually threatened with violence.
They are viewed as deranged. Their inability to see the shadows clearly anymore is interpreted by the chained prisoners as proof that the outside world has ruined them.
I want to dig into the mechanics of this because it touches on a huge fear for anyone starting a new path. Does growth fundamentally require alienating your peers? Like, why is the reaction to someone else's success or liberation so often hostile?
Well, to understand this, we have to look at the sociology of the cave, specifically through the lens of cognitive dissonance and in-group dynamics.
Okay.
When you decide to grow and break your chains, some friends simply won't have the context to understand you, but others will actively resent you.
Resent you?
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, they don't resent you because they think your new business or your new mindset is objectively flawed. Deep down, they likely suspect you are right.
Oh, wow.
They resent you because your growth directly threatens their psychological comfort.
Because if they acknowledge that you successfully escaped, they have to confront the reality that they are still sitting in the dark.
Precisely. Your courage acts as a terrifying mirror. Think about the concept of the crab bucket mentality.
Oh, I've heard of this, where one crab tries to get out.
Right. When a single crab tries to climb out of a bucket, the other crabs will actively pull it back down, ensuring they all get cooked.
That is so messed up.
It is. In human sociology, while you were sitting next to them complaining about the boss, complaining about the economy, accepting the chains, you validated their existence. Your shared misery was the glue of the social bond.
Wow. That makes so much sense.
The moment you stand up and walk out, you destroy their primary coping mechanism. You provide undeniable proof that escape is possible.
And if escape is possible, then their continued existence in the cave is no longer a tragic stroke of fate that they can complain about. It is a conscious, daily choice.
That is a staggering realization, yes.
By succeeding, or even just by taking the risk to try, you strip away their excuses.
You hold up a mirror that reminds them of their own cowardice. And human beings will employ massive amounts of cognitive dissonance to protect the illusions that keep them comfortable. It is neurologically much easier for them to attack you, to call your new venture a scam, or to label you as arrogant and out of touch than it is for them to examine their own lives and do the agonizing work of stepping into the light themselves.
Knowing that it's a sociological defense mechanism certainly reframes the rejection, but, I mean, it doesn't really dull the sting of losing friends.
That still hurts.
Right. Facing that rejection puts the person who left the cave at a really difficult crossroads. You are awake, your business is starting to gain traction, your mind is expanding, but you are totally isolated from your old community.
And this brings us to the core existential dilemma of the text. It's the burden of the awakened.
The burden of the awakened.
Yes. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. You cannot willfully unknow the complexity of the outside world. So you are left with two choices.
Okay, choice one. You can go back into the dark, sit back down, put the chains back on, and pretend to watch the shadows. You can force yourself to shrink back down to fit into their reality just so you don't have to face the loneliness of the light.
Which the text implies is a form of psychological torture.
I can imagine.
You will always know it's fake. You will be sitting there nodding along to their complaints, knowing the whole time that the door is unlocked.
Right, right. Or, choice two, you move forward. You accept the reality of the light, the initial isolation, and the heavy responsibility of awareness.
The word responsibility is the hinge upon which this entire philosophy turns. Leaving the cave doesn't just grant you freedom, it burdens you with responsibility.
Like you have to actually do something with it.
Exactly. This aligns with existentialist thought, like Sartre's idea that humans are condemned to be free.
Condemned to be free. That's a heavy phrase.
It really is. When you are chained to the wall, you are a victim of circumstance. You have no agency, but the trade-off is that you also have no culpability.
Right. If your life is miserable, it's the fault of the people casting the shadows.
Exactly. But the moment you step into the light, you bear the total weight of your own outcomes. You can no longer blame the system or your parents or your boss. This responsibility entails thinking critically, speaking the truth even when your voice shakes, and forging ahead despite the lack of a map.
I think this is a perfect moment to look at how this applies to the listener. Because if you are tuning into this deep dive, if you are actively seeking out this kind of analysis and contemplating these frameworks, well, you are already in the process of questioning the shadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're feeling the weight of the chains and wondering what's outside. Because of that, you can't really go back to sleep. You're already experiencing that cognitive dissonance.
Awareness is a one-way street. Once you realize you're capable of steering the ship, the comfort of being a passive passenger vanishes forever.
So how do we operationalize this? We've covered the philosophy, the neuroscience of the fear, and the sociology of the backlash. But how do we move from ancient allegory down to practical, everyday application?
Right, the how-to.
Yeah. The source provides a 5-step framework for actually leaving the cave. And I want us to spend some real time breaking down the mechanics of each step, because this is where the theory has to survive contact with reality.
Let's do it. Step 1 is awareness. The text argues that you cannot braid a chain you refuse to acknowledge. You have to ask yourself a highly uncomfortable question. What specific beliefs or environments are limiting me right now?
So it's about being brutally honest.
Yes. You have to shine a light on the invisible scripts running your life.
So this is about cognitive reframing. It's moving from, I don't know, I can't start a business because I don't have an MBA, to I'm currently choosing not to start a business because I am afraid of looking incompetent.
Exactly. It's radical ownership of the chains.
Wow. Okay.
Then step 2 is discomfort. And this doesn't mean quitting your job and moving to the woods tomorrow. It means actively introducing friction to challenge your established neural pathways.
Right.
If your routine is the cave, you must systematically break the pattern.
How does that actually work in practice? Like, are we talking about taking cold showers?
I mean, it can be that, but it's more about exposure therapy principles.
Okay, exposure therapy.
It's about taking small, controlled doses of the unpredictable to train your amygdala that new doesn't mean deadly.
Ah, got it.
Speak up in a meeting where you usually stay silent. Publish a piece of writing under your own name. Pitch a client even if your deck isn't perfect.
So you are intentionally spiking your cortisol in a controlled environment to build emotional palaces.
Precisely. You need to prove to your nervous system that you can survive outside the parameters of the cave.
Okay, so we're building tolerance. Then we hit step 3, which is learning. The text says you must expose yourself to new ideas, new people, and new environments.
This is about neuroplasticity and sourcing new inputs. If you want to understand the three-dimensional world, you cannot rely on the people who only study shadows.
That makes sense.
You have to find people who are already standing in the sunlight, navigating the complexities of the real world, and you have to let their frameworks overwrite your outdated scripts.
Which brings us to step 4, which the text calls action. And the primary directive here is start before you feel ready. Now, I hear this phrase everywhere, and I have a real problem with it if it's not contextualized.
Oh, I agree.
Like, start before you're ready sounds great on an inspirational poster, but in the real world, if you're talking about making a massive life pivot or launching a product, doesn't starting before you're ready just lead to catastrophic, sloppy mistakes?
It's a vital critique, and it is where many people grossly misinterpret the advice. There is a fundamental difference between taking a courageous, messy first step and acting with genuine recklessness.
Okay, what's the difference?
Recklessness is betting your life savings on a business model you haven't researched.
Right, yeah, don't do that.
Exactly. Courage is launching a minimum viable product to 10 people before the logo is perfectly polished. The text asserts that you don't need to step perfectly, you just need to step courageously. The illusion of perfect preparation is just another chain.
That's fascinating. I like to think about this using the mechanics of machine learning.
Oh, tell me.
Well, an AI doesn't get smart by sitting in an isolated server box theorizing about the perfect algorithm. It has to be fed messy, real-world data. It has to make predictions, get them wrong, adjust its internal weights, and try again.
Right, it learns by doing.
Exactly. Humans are exactly the same. Action is just data collection.
That is a brilliant analogy. The reason people wait until they feel ready is because they want to guarantee that they won't fail or experience the pain of negative feedback.
Of course.
But as we established earlier, pain and discomfort are the mandatory entry fees for the outside world.
Right, the eyes adjusting to the light.
Yes. You will never feel ready to experience pain. Therefore, if you wait until you feel ready, you will wait forever. The text provides a profound maxim here. Clarity is a byproduct of motion.
Clarity is a byproduct of motion. Explain the mechanism behind that. Why can't we just think our way into clarity?
Because the brain maps new environments through physical and conceptual movement, similar to proprioception.
Yep.
You cannot steer a parked car. When you sit in a cave analyzing the shadows, you are operating on hypothetical data.
Because it's not the real object, right?
When you actually start moving, when you record the first podcast episode, when you have the difficult conversation, when you buy the domain name, you generate real-world feedback.
Yeah.
You bump into obstacles, you see what resonates, and your brain dynamically maps the new terrain. You adjust your course based on reality, not on theory.
That relieves so much pressure. You don't have to have the 10-year master plan flawlessly mapped out to take the first step. You just need enough directional accuracy to start collecting data. And that leads to the final step, step 5, which is consistency.
Recognizing that freedom is built daily, not once. Leaving the cave isn't a single, explosive, cinematic event that solves all your problems forever. It is a quiet, daily, unglamorous decision not to go back inside.
And dealing with what psychologists call an extinction burst, right? Where right before an old habit dies, your brain makes one final, desperate attempt to force you back into the old routine.
Exactly. Your brain will scream at you to retreat when the new path gets difficult. Consistency is the process of habituating the new normal until the outside world becomes your new baseline of predictability.
So if someone diligently applies this 5-step framework, they build awareness, they endure the discomfort, they gather new inputs, they act before they are ready, and they remain consistent. What is the ultimate end game? Like, what is the larger vision that justifies all this agonizing friction?
Well, the source outlines that the ultimate goal isn't just to sit in the sun by yourself, marveling at the trees while feeling superior to the people in the dark.
Right, that sounds pretty lonely too.
The end game is value creation. It's about building something meaningful, a business, a community, a legacy. The journey fundamentally transitions from an internal focus to an external one.
I see.
It isn't just about freeing yourself anymore. It's about becoming the voice that calls down into the cave and tells others, there's more out there. You don't have to stay stuck.
I noticed the text specifically highlights modern avenues for this, like content creation, podcasting, and consulting. It views these not as trendy ways to make a quick buck, but as modern lifelines drop down into the dark.
And this raises an important question, right? It reframes a massive insecurity that stops people from creating. We often hesitate to start a business or write a blog or share our stories because we look at the market and think the internet is too saturated.
Or I'm not a world-renowned expert. Who am I to tell anyone what to do?
Precisely. But the source dismantles this beautifully. People down in the cave don't need more noise. They don't need more highly polished corporate shadows to stare at. What they desperately need is a guide.
Someone who's been there.
Exactly. They need someone who has recently chained exactly where they are, who has suffered the blinding light, who has figured out how to navigate the sun, and who can now translate that experience for them.
That flips the narrative completely. Your new venture, your art, your business, it isn't a selfish ego trip. It is a vital service to those who are still paralyzed by the same fears you just conquered.
Yes.
If you have found the cure to a specific type of misery, you have a moral obligation to share it.
You transition from being the protagonist of your own escape story to being the guide in someone else's. And from a psychological standpoint, that shift from self-preservation to service is where true, lasting fulfillment is generated.
This analysis has been an incredible roadmap for navigating the fear of the unknown. Let's distill the core insights we've extracted today. If you are listening to this and you've been feeling that quiet dread that you are playing too small, the message from this text is clear. You were not born to watch shadows.
No, you weren't.
You were not created to optimize for the lowest caloric burn. And you were absolutely not designed to live out a two-dimensional script handed to you by someone else's fears. You were meant to think deeply, to agitate the systems around you, to build something of your own, and ultimately to lead others out of the dark.
The cave you are currently in might be familiar, and the misery might be highly predictable, but it is not your permanent residence.
The ultimate challenge the text leaves us with is this. Identify just one invisible chain in your life today and test what happens if you pull on it. Introduce a fraction of unpredictability into your routine. Start gathering that messy, real-world data. Because the moment you decide that the shadows are no longer enough, you force the universe to start showing you the dimensions you've been missing.
And as you take that first step into the light, I want to leave you with one final philosophical implication to ponder. If leaving one cave reveals a wider, brighter, vastly more complex world, what happens when you finally map the edges of that new world? What if growth isn't a one-time dramatic escape to an ultimate reality, but a lifelong, continuous commitment to realizing that every reality you settle into might just be another slightly larger cave waiting for you to break its chains?